Hey darlings, welcome back to my channel. Thank you very much for being here. So today I'm going to be sharing with you guys how to make this figure 8 mermaid skirt using your basic skirt pattern. If you want to learn how to make this, make sure you watch till the end. So for this video, I'm going to be using my basic long skirt pattern for this, and I have tutorials already on how I draft my basic skirt pattern. I'll put the links of the videos in the description box below, so you check it out later. Now for clarification purpose, this is the waistline, the hip line, the knee line, and the rest of the skirt pattern is the full length of my long skirt. So the first modification I'm going to be doing is to retrace the knee line. Now to retrace the knee line, I have to find it on my skirt. So now, as you can see, I took away 1.5 inch from the pattern because my skirt comes with a separate waistband. So now I'm going to be retracing my knee line all the way from 23 inches to about 18 inches right here, because I like my mermaid effect of my skirt to come right above my knee line. So I'm going to be retracing the knee line to 18 inches. Now, while you retrace your knee line, the next step is to determine how wide you want the figure 8 of your skirt to be. Now, at the hip line of your skirt, measuring from the center front of your skirt, I'm going to be marking at 6.5 inches, but you can make yours smaller for a smaller or average size person, down to 5 inches or so. Now, on the new knee line retraced, I'm going to be measuring 4 inches right from the center front, just as I have on my dart on this part of the line. Next, at the base of the skirt pattern, I'm going to be measuring in 4 inches from the center front, and then I'm going to be connecting it all the way to the knee line. Now, after this, the next thing I'm going to do is to connect the hip line to the waistline mark I made, then retrace my dart. Now from here, I'm going to be retracing my dart to match the new curves we just made there. So guys, if you're yet to subscribe to my channel, please don't forget to click the subscribe button below, turn on your notification bell so that you don't miss any of my tutorials. And then if you have enjoyed this tutorial so far, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put it down on the comment section below. So next, I'm going to be connecting the mark I made on the hip line to that of the knee line, just like this. You can use a free hand if you don't have the curve ruler. So now the next thing I'm going to do now is to cut out my pattern, and don't forget to cut off this dart off your pattern because you won't be needing it. Now the pattern I made will be adequate to cut both the front and the back side of my skirt, but I'm going to start off with cutting out the front piece, starting from the center part of the skirt. Now I'll be cutting on fold, and to determine the amount of fabric to fold in, I added 4 inches as I have from the center front all the way to this part, plus 7.5 inch extra, and this also includes my seam allowance. As you can see right here, I have 7.5 inches extra right here, and this will be used to form the mermaid or fish effect to my skirt. So now the first thing I'm going to do right now is to mark out the baseline, the knee line of the skirt on the fabric. Next, I'm going to mark off 1 inch from the edge, and then from the knee line, I'm going to be connecting all the way to this point. Then I'm going to retrace my pattern on my fabric all the way to the waistline, add my seam allowance, and I'm going to add seam allowance all around the skirt. And at the center front at the baseline, I added 1 inch extra to create a round effect to the front piece of my skirt, and then connect it to the original side seam. Next, I'm going to be adding my seam allowance at the baseline, also connecting to the seam allowance at the side seam area, just like this. So now, after marking this, you can go ahead and cut out the center part of your front piece, and when you're done cutting, it should look something like this. And next, I'm going to be cutting out the center back of my skirt using the center front I just cut out now. Now the center piece of the back side of my skirt comes in 2 pieces, so you can either cut on fold or individually. But before you place the center front piece, make sure you have about 7.5-inch allowance right here before you place the center piece of the front side of your skirt. Now also at the side seam area, I have about 2.5 inches extra allowance right here, and you're going to be seeing what I'm going to use it for. Now below the skirt, I have 6 inches allowance also, because the back side of the centerpiece of the skirt is going to be longer than that of the front to create the train effect at the back side of my skirt. So now first I'm going to be adding 3 inches extra to the length of the back piece. Next I'm going to connect it to the side seam like this. Then I'm going to connect all the way to the front side to the center back like this. Now I indicate my knee line on the fabric at the back side. Then I'm going to be retracing what I have here all around to the waistline. Please ignore this first line here, is a mistake. So what you just need to do is to connect from your knee line all the way to this point. But first of all, you're going to measure in 1 inch from the edge of the fabric, just as we did for the front piece. Then connect it to the knee line to form the mermaid effect or the tail effect. So now the next thing I'm going to do now is to mark in my zip allowance, which is about 1 inch right here, and then mark my seam allowance, connecting it to the seam allowance. So right here I'm going to go ahead and cut out my pattern, and this is what it looks like. So the next thing is to cut out the side panels. Now to cut out the side panels, I'm going to be starting off with the front pieces, and you can either cut this on fold, cut both sides at the same time, or you cut individually. Now to measure out the fabric you're going to use, the first thing I did was to place my pattern right here, and I made sure that I have about 7.5 inches allowance on both sides of the pattern piece. Now the next thing I did was to mark the midpoint of both the pattern and the fabric, just to keep the fabric and the pattern in proper place. Then marked out 1/2 inch for my seam allowance at the base of the pattern. So the next thing I did was to mark out 1 inch from the edges of the fabric on both sides of the fabric, just as we did for the center part. So the next thing I'm going to do right here is to indicate the knee line. Then I'm going to connect all the way to the knee line on both sides of my skirt, and then I'm going to be retracing my pattern all around, and when you're done you should have something like this. Next you add your seam allowance all around the mark you've made, and then from the base of the skirt I marked out 2 inches to create the curve at the side seam of my skirt. You can mark from 1 inch to 1.5 inch to 2 inches depending on how pronounced you want the curve at the side seam to be. Then you connect it all the way to the midpoint of the panel. Next I'm going to add my 1/2 inch seam allowance at the base of the skirt, and then I'm going to retrace all the way to the midpoint as well. So now, in case I forgot to mention earlier on, make sure you add your seam allowance at the top part of the skirt, since you're going to be having a separate waistband to it. I also did this for the centerpiece as well. So now, after cutting out this part of my skirt, I'm going to be using this to cut out the side panels for the back side of my skirt. So guys, remember I made the center part of the back side longer by 3 inches. So I'm going to equally effect it at this point also by elongating this area by 3 inches to match what we have at the centerpiece. So next I'm going to be connecting right from the elongated area all the way to the side seam of my skirt. Remember I told you the back side will be longer than the front side, or is actually longer than the front piece, to create the mermaid effect at the back side of my skirt. So now I'm going to be cutting this out since all the seam allowances are already there. So now I have the front side and the back side. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to put these pieces together to see how it looks after sewing it. So I start off with joining this part together, both the center and the side seam on both sides of the skirts together. Now after joining it, you should have something like this. And then to ensure that when you turn this to the right side of your fabric, you have a relaxed, smooth look, you're going to notch the seam line all the way from the waist area down to the baseline. Now you do same for the back pieces as well, and this is one of the back pieces, and I'm going to be placing both right side to each other like this. First, I'm going to be measuring out where my zipper will be, pin it up about 9 inches, measuring from the waistline. Then I'm going to stitch the rest up. Then I'm going to also notch the necessary areas up to ensure a relaxed look at the center part of my back piece like this. So now the next thing I'm going to do right now is to place both the front and the back together and stitch it by the side seams on both sides of the skirt. Next, I sew in my waistband and my zipper, and this is how the pattern turned out to be. I enjoyed making this pattern, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. If you did, please don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, and you can share my videos with your friends. And if you have any questions or comments, please put it down on the comment section below, and I'll be glad to get back to you. See you guys in my next tutorial. Bye.